Already been with us, isn't he? Yes. He is with us before we got here. Ain't God good? I love serving. I thank you for the opportunity to come back. Brother Don, thank you for letting me come. And, man, I see so many familiar faces. Some of y'all have got old. I started the deal about a month before the COVID deal hit. I had done a funeral for one of my high school classmates, and I was standing there, and the old boy was lost. And can I move this down here? I got it. Old boy was lost, and they didn't find him for 3 or 4 days after he died. And so we kind of had a graveside deal, and a lot of them guys I went to high school was there, and I thought, well, we need to get together. I need to have a chance to speak into their life. So I talked to 2 or 3 of them, and they said, no, nobody will come. So one day I was going to shoot some horses, and I thought, tomorrow's the day. And I just stopped and saw one of them. I called another one, and there was 5 of us got together, over here at Marvin's. I mean, you got to eat. And them guys said, let's meet every Wednesday. I said, I can't meet every Wednesday. I got to work. And so they meet once a month, and I don't get to meet with them all the time. The last time I was there, I'm sitting there, and I thought, y'all done got old. All you got to talk about is what we used to do. Man, I'm still doing. Anybody else? Yeah. Man, I'm glad to be here today. Well, it's been about 28 years since y'all got enough of me. And I resigned and went in. Patty and I went into, at that time we called it, we didn't know what to call it. There wasn't any cowboy churches going around like they are now, but we just started doing cowboy churches at the rodeo. We'd done it for over 30-something years, and God blessed us with that. We're still involved with that. We worked Whitwell, Tennessee last night. We'll go to Canton, Georgia next week. We'll be in Laverne, Alabama the week after that. We worked 7 performances in 8 days over the 4th of July. Patty's the secretary. I judge. We get a lot of stuff done. And then I pastor a church. I'm at Maxwell Baptist Church there in the big community of Maxwell. Y'all know where Maxwell community is? There's a graveyard there and a church. But at one time, that was the happening place in Franklin County. At one time, that's where the railroad came through and all them people off them mountains up there. See, y'all, does anybody go to Gatlinburg to see the colors? You're wasting your money. Get on Highway 16, ride up to the top of the mountain, come back down through Paint Rock Valley. You get all the color. You won't sleep in your bed at night. Won't cost you a dime. Now, when I was a kid growing up, on those old mountains, there were still old fields, because families used to live up there. They raised their children, they made crops, they had their hogs and their dogs and their cows, and they would drive them off to the stock pens there at Maxwell. It had a school, it had a church, it had a big Horton store, and a depot, and so it was a happening place. Well, all that's gone now. And I'm pastoring there. And I've been there for almost 23 years. That's hard to believe. I came there as interim. I told them I'd help them till they could find a pastor, and they hadn't found one yet. We was in deacons meeting, and I said, I'm thinking about resigning and letting y'all find you a pastor, get you a good pastor. And Roy Gross said, we ain't had one in so long, we'll just keep you. But, and I didn't mean to go there, but we did. And let me tell you that story. It's kind of neat. The grandson of the man I'm fixing to tell you about just texted me a while ago. As we pulled up, he texted me, and I texted him back. He just got out of rehab. And we saw him, passed him on the road yesterday. But his granddaddy had a big part in my young life. His son and I graduated. Well, we started first grade together. Really, the desk didn't fit him yet when we caught up with him in first grade. And Mike and I, there were 8 Mikes in my graduating class of 42 kids. But we've been friends, played Little League ball together, run around together. His daddy, Tommy, had a big influence in my life. He had worked me, hauled hay. I'd been around him, and most everybody called him Granddaddy Foster. But I started as an interim there, and Tommy came to me, and he said, why don't you take this church and be the pastor? I said, Tommy, I don't want to be the pastor here. I'm satisfied just to fill in every now and then until y'all can find a pastor. Finally, he made this plea to me. He said, Mike, if you'll become the pastor of this church, he said, I want you to be my pastor one time before I die. And he said, I promise you I'll quit playing cards and I'll pour out all my whiskey. I did and he did. Now, how are you going to turn that down? I did and Tommy did. His kids say, we didn't know what happened to Daddy. We didn't know why Daddy quit all that. So that's why I'm still at Maxwell. And Tommy's long been gone, but we were good friends, and I got to be his pastor. Man, I've been wrestling. I got my kids with me, part of my kids and my grandkids. I got all my grandkids. Listen, you talk about a ball team. I got 3 little stem winder granddaughters that can play a mean baseball. You hear me? They good at it. And we're working on that. And the boys, they hadn't found their talent yet, but it's all over them. I mean, they go from tractor pull to horses to Stetson's already saw the basketball goals and shown me how to shoot. And they'll be 3 next month. And we're just overflowing with blessings. God's been good to us. And can I borrow somebody's watch? I don't have one. Let me borrow your watch. I know y'all probably don't care when I stop, but you'll say that, but you really do. When I was here before, the deacons got on to me, Brother Don, because I preached so long. Steve Hurst, back when we built that building over there and had the little sound room up top, Steve was the first guy that I knew who really had a computer and knew how to run it, And he had him a sign he had printed up. He'd hang it out, said, time to quit. And it never did bother me any. I kept going. And one night in Deacon's meeting, something was said about my long sermons, and Steve said, well, we did call him to preach, not to quit. But I do like to know kind of where I'm at in this deal. But can I just be, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't help it. I've been struggling. What was I going to say to y'all? You see, I listen to this man pretty regular on his daily devotions. I know y'all are getting the word. I go some places to preach, and it's like people look at me like, huh? Because they're not getting the word. Listen, you count yourself lucky that this man will preach to you the word, because that's where the truth is at. But I go someplace and I think, what in the world is this guy telling them? I really wanted to be at Maxwell today because I'm preaching through Revelation. Man, and I'm 2 chapters ahead of the pastor at First Baptist Church of Dallas. See, when you get old, you lose that. What's his name? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I ain't the only one. But he's in chapter 12, and I'm in chapter 14, and I wanted to be there today to preach about the messages of the angels in heaven. Last week we talked about the song of the 144,000, the new song that's going to be sung. I get excited about that. But I thought, what am I going to say? When in doubt, go back to what's kept you stable. If you have your Bibles, and some of you who've been here when I was here, Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Because that's where it's at. I deal with a lot of different kind of people. Somebody asked me the other day, when are you going to quit? I said, when I have to. I still shoe horses. I still judge rodeos. And one of the things I like about judging rodeos is getting paid. But the other thing is I'm around people who are pretty much positive. they wasn't positive, they wouldn't be there entering. If they didn't think they had a chance to win something, they wouldn't be there. And I like to be around that kind of people. And they're younger people. I sat down at my desk this morning after I got up, and I thought about this. 5 things that everybody's on a quest for today. No matter who you talk to, they're kind of on a quest for this. Number 1, what's going to make me happy? How many of you want to be happy? Raise your hand. How many of you are here? How many of you don't care whether you're happy or not? You just soon go through life with the mully grubs. Feel like you're born on the dark side of the moon, weaned in on a dill pickle, baptized in vinegar. You like going through life looking like it. Do we want to be happy? We do. What's going to make me happy? The second question I wrote down this morning, what's going to give me significance? What's going to give me significance? I want to live a kind of life that my life counts. Huh? I mean, we tell our kids, find a job that you love and you'll never have to go to work a day in your life. Huh? Am I right, Will? It's still W-O-R-K. And by the way, I don't get but one shot at you every 30 years, so any single ladies in here today, raise your hand. Now, I'm not looking. All right. If he does not have a J-O-B, do not give him your number. Period. The third thing is, what is going to make me prosper? Young people today are getting married and they want to have what their parents have now, and they want to get it right now. And parents have had to suffer and work hard and save and scrimp and prop up their couch with bricks, and we know all about that. And about the time you think you're fixing to get ahead, you'll have another baby. Number 4 is, who will complete me? Who will complete me? Now, I'm going to cover a lot of stuff today, but let me throw this at you. My daddy had a cousin. She had 5 right ones. Every time we'd see her, she'd done got divorced and found another. He's the right one. Hey, there ain't a right one. Be the right one. Makes a big difference. Who's going to make me? Who's going to complete me? And number 5 thing I wrote down this morning is, how can I make a difference? One of these days, every one of us is going to breathe our last breath. We're going to breathe our last breath. What are they going to say about us? I heard this a long time ago. I want to live my life so that when I die, the preacher don't have to lie. We went to a funeral. Me and Tommy, the guy that I was telling you about, the old man that got me to come to church, or got me to be the pastor, and somebody else was preaching the funeral. We got out in the car, and Tommy said, I went to school with that old boy that died. And he said, after listening to that preacher, I don't think I ever knew him. I don't think I ever knew him. There's one thing that keeps me going, it keeps me coming back and keeps me motivated, and it's Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. God changed my life in my early 20s, being I understood, and I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I haven't got there yet. December the 11th, 1975, I walked an aisle, and I knelt in prayer. Ray Gardner came and talked to me, and I said, Brother Ray, this don't work for me. The Christian life doesn't work for me. I've tried, I've confessed, I've prayed, I've asked God to change me, I've asked God to kill me, not let me see another day, because I'm tired of living my life with nothing. I'm tired of living my life the way I'm going, and it don't work for me. And he said something to me that blew my mind. He said, Mike, you never can, and you never will. You've got to let Jesus do it in you. Now, all these years later, I'm still learning how to do that. But it comes down to these verses, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Paul says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your body a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Father, today, we've already prayed, we've sang, we've worshiped, you've been here, you've dealt with our lives. But now I pray that you'd help me to focus on what's important and to give us the victory that we have today. Help us to realize that and walk in it. In Jesus' name. Amen. Now, I've used this passage for years, and those of you who've been here a long time, when I was here, you know that I preach from this quite often. I was thinking about some funny things. Gary and Betty come in. Betty used to work at the school over there, at elementary school. She was a school teacher, cafeteria worker, and drove school bus. Now, back in those early days, I had some horses, and me and Spook and Frog had some horses, and I'd be down there, and and I went in one day, and Boss Hogg, now some of y'all don't remember Boss Hogg, he was a dog, he was a bulldog. And you could pull up in a pair of jeans, Brother Don, and Boss Hogg would never get up off the porch. He'd just lay there, have one eye propped up, he'd just lay there. You could step across him. And I'd go in and fix myself a sandwich, whatever it may be. One day, I was going to a funeral home, and I was dressed up, had a suit on, and I got out, and Boss Hogg tried to eat me up. Gary had him trained. Preachers and insurance collectors, you know. But I went in there that day, and I got Betty's last piece of bologna. You remember that? I went by the school, I said, Betty, you out of bologna? We had some funny times, you know, some good times, some good things. And so you know that this passage means a lot to me. Now, I began to look at some things, and listen, to be a good Bible student, you've got to look at the Word, the whole Word, not just pull out pieces of it. Remember, you ought to know this, the New Testament is not written in original text. Original manuscripts have no chapters and no verses in them. They are a letter. Anybody ever write a letter? Do you put chapter 1? Do you put verse 1? No. There are no letters and chapters in the original manuscripts. It's written as a letter. And Paul is continuing in chapter 12. He is continuing the discussion in chapter 11. And in the discussion in chapter 11, he's talking about the mercies of God. He's talking about the blessings of God. He's talking about the overwhelming blessings of God and the fact that we have His mercy. We can almost get on shouting ground. Amen? Man, we could have us scratch you off a place and have a spell. The mercies of God. I'm glad for the mercies of God, because God's mercy does not let me get what I deserve. He gives me by His mercy and by His grace something I can't earn, something I don't deserve, something I'll never be able to nail down in my life that I did, because it's by grace we've been saved. Now, he starts chapter 12 with this. I beseech you, therefore. Now, the word therefore is very important if you're going to be a serious Bible student, because anytime you see the word therefore, wherefore, and, but, it carries on the conversation that was just taking place. So he's talking about the mercies of God, and he leads us on into this. He says, I beseech you, I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you by the mercies of God. Because we've experienced the mercies of God, listen to me, you better listen to this. Just because you've been saved by grace through the mercies of God does not take any requirements away from you after you've been saved. You're responsible for your life after you've been saved. You're responsible to live a Christian life. You're responsible to make the most of the Word of God. And so what he's telling us here is, listen, to me is a key secret. A living sacrifice. Now, most of us have the concept that we can go to the altar one time, get right with God, and everything's going to be great. See, that's what I had been going through. Man, God, I don't want to drink anymore. God, I don't want to do some other stuff I was doing anymore. There is a law, I'm way past that law where they can get me in trouble today, but there's things that I put in my body that were not wholesome, not good. And I wrestled with that. And I'd come, God, forgive me, God, change me. When I found out the truth of this verse, it began to revolutionize my life. Because it's a matter of daily surrendering my life to the Lordship of Christ. The happy people in life are those people who learn the significance of surrendering my life on a daily basis to the Lordship of Christ. And when I do that, it's amazing what God begins to do in my life. The victory He begins to give. The power He begins to give. The opportunities He begins to make in my life. Man, He begins to move in my life. And He begins to work in my life. God is real. He is on the throne. It's amazing how my flesh gets in my way. Anybody else? Do you ever have a problem, a battle with your flesh? Do you ever just want to jump down somebody's throat, do a tap dance on their liver? Man, I want to sometimes. Sometimes it's all I can do. See, it's those times that I have to go back and I surrender my life fresh and new on a daily basis to the Lordship of Christ. And as I do that, as I surrender to Him, He does His work of filling me. He does His work of taking the reins. He does His work of giving me the cues that I need in my life to move this way, to move that way. You asked me about working at the cow sale. I don't work there anymore, but I do frequent some horse sales. There's a whole lot more crooks at the horse sales than there are at the cow sales. But we were at the horse sale back in the winter. I got to tell this because I got a pocket knife that I carry because of this. Pretty cool pocket knife. Now, this is my Sunday knife, okay? This is my Sunday knife. During the week, I carry a big knife back here because I deal with a lot of thugs. No, not really. That knife back here has got one blade on it, and the other blade is a hoof pick to clean out horses' feet with, and that's what I use. But on Sundays, I carry this blade now. Pretty good story. We went to a horse sale, and it was packed. I mean, people everywhere, not enough seats, and I found an empty seat, and I got in it. And my son and daughter-in-law were down there on the floor. They're buying horses. They're selling horses. They're in the midst of the deal. And in come this guy. I mean, I can't describe him to you, okay? Do you remember watching or seeing Charlie Brown? And there was a guy on Charlie Brown that everywhere he went, like there was a cloud behind him. What was his name? Linus? Well, this was Linus and an old man on a walker. Comes up them long steps, get up on the floor, and then goes down there. In a little while, he's done pulled his shirt off. Man, he's done stripped down, got his overalls, done took everything off and standing up there trying to buy stuff, and he's betting on horses and stuff, and I'm thinking, where did he escape from? He's got to be an escapee from somewhere. All about 3 hours later, and them horse sales go a long time, about 3 hours later, here he comes back up there, and that looked like a cloud was behind him. And I'm thinking, I'm up there minding my own business, and I'm thinking, God, don't let him stop here. You ever been there? Don't let him stop here. Why does God send me them people? Everywhere I go, I find them. And he just camped out right there beside me. And I thought, Lord, I don't want to witness to him. I don't want anybody to see me talking to him. But guess what? I talked to him. And I witnessed to him. He's recently out of jail. I don't know if his checks that night at the horse sale were good or not, but he was making his way selling knives. And he pulled his knives. In his pockets were just all kind of knives. And the Lord spoke to my heart, buy a knife so you can share me. And I bought a pocket knife, a case pocket knife. He wanted $30 for it, and I got it for $20. And I got to share Christ. Just out of jail. He made his living selling knives on the street and other things. But I got to share Christ with him. Folks, that's what life is about. You want to find significance in life? You want to find what makes you happy? Lose yourself in the cause of Christ. Lose yourself in a relationship, a loving relationship with Jesus Christ. Everything else will begin to fall into place. You'll find significance because it's not in me. You know, all those questions that I read had me or I in them. When we fall in love with Jesus and we make much of him and we surrender our life to him on a daily basis, I'm going to tell you something. All of a sudden, me and I are no longer important. All of a sudden, it's Christ. All of a sudden, it's all about him and it's not about me. You want to find out who the happy people are? The happy people are people who are serving. Before I came here, Brother Don, I was at Wall Highway Baptist Church, big church down in Alabama at the time. And we were like number 5 fastest growing Sunday schools in the state of Alabama. Boy, we were doing it. Huh. Old boy told me one day, and what he told me reminded me of what Vance Havner said. Vance Havner said a lot of churches have a field that's a mile wide and 1 inch deep. And that's so true. That's so true. But there's a lady, she come to me one day, very good woman, quiet woman, godly woman. And she was a very timid woman, and she said, I just feel like I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. Now, I'm not real smart. I'm not a counselor. I thought I was at one time. I decided I'm not a counselor. I said, I think I can help you, though. I took a piece of paper and I wrote down 4 widow women's names, old women in the church. I handed it to her. I called her by name and I said, now here's what I want you to do. Once a week, I want you to make a pan of cookies and take it to one of these women. And spend some time with one of these women. Oh, about 6 weeks later, I saw her come down the hallway and she saw me and she turned to go the other way. You know, in them big churches, you can kind of do that. And she turned to go the other way. And I said, wait a minute, Miss Dora, come here. I said, how's your nervous breakdown going? She said, I ain't had time to have it. You see, most of our problems stem because of me, I. But when we sell out to Christ, lock, stock, and barrel, whole hog, everything gone, we transfer ownership of everything over to Him, all of a sudden, God begins to do a fresh work in our life, and it's no longer I, it's no longer me, it's no longer mine, it's His. It's His. Don, you remember me and you going to shoot them horses that day, and that horse had that bad cut on its leg. Bad cut. She had been standing there three-legged for 2 or 3 days before we got there. And the old boy that owned the horse, his daddy had been a music man down in Alabama at a church and had left his family for the church secretary. So that old boy had no use for the gospel. But as we talked that day, and Don was with me, I shared with him about how we transfer ownership of everything comes to our place. Everything is not mine, it's God's. And when we got through, he asked us to pray, and we prayed. And right after we prayed, if you remember, that mare started stomping that other foot because she was standing on that bad leg. I wound up buying her, wound up making a decent rope horse out of her, and that scar was the testimonies of the healing power of God. I saw him 2 weeks ago. He walked up to me at Seeley's ball tournament, and I'd forgotten about him, but it was all fresh then. Because you see, if you own it, you got to worry about it. If you don't own it, you don't have to worry about it. It's somebody else's problems. Somebody else's trouble. Somebody else's heartache. It's God's. God can handle your stuff better than you can. And when you give it to Him and you give Him yourself, it changes the whole complexity. And then all of a sudden, you can go through life. It don't matter what happens. You're still happy. Kind of like the old boy, he was standing in line to get on an airplane. The guy in front of him was giving the young man behind the counter a terrible time. He was giving him a tongue lashing and telling him what for. And the young man behind the counter at the baggage check-in was just smiling so graciously and just kept on and kept on and kept on. And the guy just finally run out of gas. He was just tearing this kid down. And when he went on, the next guy stepped up, and this guy happened to be a pastor. He said, young man, I want to congratulate you for how you handled that. He said, oh, it's no problem, no big deal. He's going to Miami, but his bags are going to Los Angeles. You know, you can handle stuff when it's God's business, when God begins to work in your life. But he said here, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies, your life, yourself a living sacrifice. Now, we've all done that at some point in time in our life. But let me tell you what the problem with this living sacrifice is. It keeps crawling off the altar. It keeps crawling off the altar. When we rope calves, we flank them, tie up 3 legs, called a picking string. We tie it up, we get up, and the calf can't go. It can kick free. In the Old Testament, when the priest would make the sacrifice, they would tie up the lamb. They would cut its throat, catch its blood in a basin. The lamb didn't kick anymore. After the blood came out, the lamb was done. Then they cooked him, and he's real done. They did. They cooked him on the altar. He was done. The priest would reach in with their flesh hooks and pull out what they wanted. They always got the ham part. They left the other stuff to everybody else, I guess. But that lamb couldn't get off the altar. Can I tell you what the problem I have in my personal life is? Mike keeps crawling off the altar. I think I've got everything settled. I think I've got everything done. And when I wake up tomorrow morning, guess what? I'm off the altar. I got to get back on the altar. And it becomes a daily routine of my life. It becomes a daily routine of your life if you're going to be serious about serving God, being in it for the long haul, finding out what your significance really is, finding out that it's not about what makes me happy, it's about what makes me holy. And then we begin to do business with God. He begins to work himself fresh in us. And it's amazing what will happen in this nation if God's church gets to the place where we go outside these walls and outside these doors, we live like Jesus is real. That's where it's at. God doesn't care how loud you holler and how high you jump. It's how straight you walk when you get outside these doors. Now, if we stay in our little circles, we all keep pretty safe, don't we? But sometimes you get out of your little circles. When my girls were little, and I lived here, we'd go to the cow sale, and one day I was at the cow sale, and this guy was just swearing and cussing, using God's name in vain. I had my little girls with me. Now I thought, now how am I going to deal with this? He's too old for me to punch in the nose. So I just got down beside him and started talking to him. Then I witnessed to him. He looked at me and he said, I'm a deacon at First Baptist Church, and he named it. Reckon he has any testimony there? Reckon anybody ever comes up to him and say, man, I wish you'd pray for me about this? You see, it's how we walk outside these doors that will make a difference. Last night they played that song at the rodeo, flag going around, God Bless America Again. Would you agree with that today? But before God can ever bless America again, he's going to have to be able to bless the church. You see, if America's not blessable, he won't bless it. And it begins in the church houses. It begins with the people of those of us in the pew, those of us in the pulpit. Had an evangelist come preaching my church. He's a big deal in the Tennessee Baptist Convention. I'm going to share something with you that may shock you. It shocked me. There is a big problem today among preachers who are social drinking. I just visited with a friend of mine. He's on staff at First Baptist Church, Rome, Georgia. Their pastor just come out of rehab. Alcoholic. Is it any wonder our churches are so shallow? Why don't y'all get so quiet all of a sudden? The rodeo announcers at most of the rodeos we go to now, they'll say, they'll say, any Methodist here, any Presbyterian here, and this is at the rodeo, and then they say, any Baptist here with a drinking problem, they done got their hand up. That's in public. Folks, we're facing an epidemic in our nation of ungodliness, and some of it's in the house of God. I didn't write that down to share it with you, but I shared it with you, and if you don't like it, you tell him not to ever have me back. You see, judgment begins in the house of God. And in the house of God, it begins in our personal life. And we've got to come to the place where we surrendered totally to the Lordship of Christ. We begin to move forward. Then it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Do you ever have your mind renewed? You won't get it watching Gunsmoke. I like to watch Marshall Dillon. Really, I like Festus. I watch all that stuff. But let me tell you where you better get your mind renewed at. It's in the Word of God. If you don't have a good Bible study plan, let me give you a place to start. There are 31 days in most months. There are 31 Proverbs in the book of Proverbs. You can take a proverb a day. And you look through my Bible, I've got, man, I mean, it's off. I put the date down that I claim a verse. Now, I've been doing this for over 30-something years, a proverb a day. I don't do it every month. I do it when I can, but I do it a lot of times. I found out 4 things, or there's 4 kind of people in Proverbs. There's the wise. There's the scornful, the simple, and the foolish. Nothing good ever happens to them last 3. All the good stuff in Proverbs happens to those who are wise. And you'll be wise if you'll get in the Word of God and if you'll commit yourself to His lordship on a daily basis, surrendering your rights, surrendering your feelings to the lordship of Christ. You may know what is that good and perfect will of God. There's a story in 1 Chronicles chapter 13 through 1 Chronicles chapter 16. It's the only place we really find out about this man. His name is Obed-Edom. You ever heard of Obed-Edom? Obed-Edom was a pretty neat guy. He was pretty insignificant until David and his men went to move the ark. And as they were moving the ark, you know the story. They had it on a new cart, pulled it by these oxen, and all of a sudden it rocked, and one man reached his hand up to steady the ark, and God killed him just like that. And they didn't know what to do, so they left the ark in a man's house. That man was Obed-Edom. And it stayed there for months. But while the ark of God stayed at Obed-Edom's house, you know what stayed at Obed-Edom's house? Blessings. Man, the presence of God, there are blessings in the presence of God. Then David decided, hey, God's blessing Obed-Edom too much. We need to go bring the ark, bring God back here. They built a place, they built a house, for God. And they went and got the ark. The only thing is, Obed-Edom came with them. And you find in chapter 13, 14, 15, and 16, you'll find they couldn't get rid of Obed-Edom. Everywhere they find. Listen, he's in the band, he's singing, he's an usher, he's a janitor. He's doing all he can do in the house of God. Why? Because he has done experienced the blessings of God in the house of God with the person of God. He can't. Listen, what I'm sharing with you today will get you to the place where you can be an Obed-Edom. That's all I've ever wanted to be, Brother Don. I just want to be Obed-Edom. I want to be where God can bless me. I want to be where God's hand is upon me. Now, that's the question you've got to decide for yourself. Are you satisfied to come, sit, soak, and sour? Start at 10 o'clock sharp and end at 12 o'clock dull? A lot of people are. I don't want to be. And I think some of you don't want to be. Father, as we give this invitation today, and Lord, people's already used the altar. I don't know if we're going to have music or what, Lord, but I just pray that you deal with our hearts, deal with our lives. Help us to make wise decisions about who's going to be boss in our life, to surrender to your lordship, to commit ourselves to you on a daily basis. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.